None of these tired legal arguments, as Scottish historian John Kay remarked in summing up the Kashmir dilemma, need have precluded a negotiated settlement had it been possible to isolate the Kashmir problem. But it was not possible. Like a fuse box, Kashmir was soon discovered to lie at a point where the delicate internal wiring of two new and complex polities met a high number of high-voltage external polarities, close quote. That succinct summation could be revised with just one insertion to now read nuclearized high-voltage external polarities. But my task on hand here this evening is not to discuss sonorously yet again peace prospects in Kashmir after October 88 or after May 98. To these decadal turning points might I also add November 2008, because the Composite Dialogue Process, thanks to Bombay 2611, is pretty much compost, for which Kashmiris have much to be embittered and blame Pakistan, not India. By the by, Bombay was where the last Maharaja, Jammu-born Hari Singh, died in 1961. His sumptuous residence, Kashmir House, was in the upscale Malabar Hill, only a lane away from another Malabar Hill resident at No. 2 Mount Pleasant Road, a certain M.A. Jinnah. Neither ever met in Bombay or Kashmir, though Jinnah visited Kashmir thrice, 1926, 1936 and 1944. By the time of his last visit, he was popular among certain sections of the Muslim population. The Pakistani historian Farooq Ahmad Dar, himself an ethnic Kashmiri however, highlights that Jinnah was reticent to cultivate the Muslim Conference party, lest its closeness to the All India Muslim League raise suspicion among other quarters in the kingdom. It is evident I intend to afford an historical but also ethno-linguistic overview of the region and scenario. In so doing, I hope to provide some insight into the richness and rectify the reductiveness of the erstwhile kingdom in discussion, the largest among the 565 princely states, coterminous with the British provinces of the Indian Empire. Time does not permit me to trace the antecedents of this kingdom and the advent of Dogra dynastic rule with an intact Rajput genealogy drawn up with a little British cooperation by the March 1846 Treaty of Amritsar to establish their sway in this vast northern expanse. Nor is it possible to contextualize through theories of modernity and state formation about Kashmir, and there is a very banal reason for this. It is difficult to talk of Kashmiri nationalism since there is no nation state to institutionalize the narrative of Kashmiri nationalism. The Dogra dynasts purchased actually, this territory from the British. Gulab Singh, the first ruler, assumed proprietary rights over those lands of Jammu and Kashmir, the Vale, historically, culturally and religiously linked with the then Sikh kingdom of what is today's West Punjab. The Dogras were then to annex Ladakh at the easternmost end later after a local rebellion. Gilgit, Balochistan and Skardu were fused with ambiguous borders and even more ambivalent sovereignty in 1888-89 after British anxieties of Sino-Russian interference, political and economic. It led them to prevail upon the newly installed dynasts to distance themselves from the kingdom of Chitral and adjoining Pashtun inhabited lands. In 1889, Persian was replaced with Urdu as a medium of scholarly instruction, in vogue with the rest of the northern half of peninsular India. And this led to advances in educational and vocational opportunities for both Punjabi Hindus but also indigenous Kashmiri Brahmins, also known as Pandits. Long-standing linkages, mercantile and transport too, were until the beginning of the First Indo-Pak War of 47-48 with British India's Punjab province. The Jammu-Sialkot rail line as well as road links to Srinagar from Rawalpindi, a garrison town, was the first market for fruit and timber exports from the kingdom. Through this arterial link, the Rawalpindi-Muzaffarabad-Srinagar Metal Road, running beside the Jhelum River, the valley depended also for goods and services, including daily essentials and petroleum. It was the most convenient route from Kashmir to the outside world through the Indian Empire. The kingdom did share a longer-running border with what became the new dominion of Pakistan on August 1447. Both the Jhelum and Chenab rivers had their headwaters in Kashmir, the Indus beginning as the Sangpo on the Tibetan plateau, before entering Pakistan as the lifeline of that country. But ladies and gentlemen, correlation is not causation. It is necessary to spotlight these aspects of contiguity and propinquity which are forwarded by Pakistan for its initially at first sight surer but ultimately indecisive claim on this province, and thereby justifying its full acronym with the K for Kashmir in that expression which also connotes land of the pure. The other derivatives were P for Punjab, A for the NWFP or historic Afghan bit south of the Durand line, S for Sindh, and the Indo-Iranian suffix Stan, literally place, substituting Balochistan. That the Baloches would beg to differ has been plainly evident during the last 70 years. And my speeches at the UN, Geneva yesterday, and during the past 3 years have elicited modest enthusiasm. The Balochis would agree with me. It is not fashionable for a certain sort of liberal intellectual to portray their plight contrasted with Palestinians, Kashmiris, or Tibetans. And incidentally, questions of accession and sovereignty as regards Balochistan are as old as that of Kashmir. But Kashmir does make it in the press and public consciousness, at least to some extent. Palestine does due to religious geography, but principally Arab clout and cash. Both Balochis and Kashmiris are woefully lacking in either. The Tibetans, even more impoverished than both, make up with moral standing. So it was timely of The Economist to point out, in case it needed to be driven home, in its 22nd July 2017 survey of India and Pakistan at 70 that, quote, whereas India's men in uniform face intense scrutiny in Kashmir, Pakistan enjoys a far freer hand, decimating whole villages across the NWFP and Balochistan, a province in sporadic revolt since independence, close quote. Kashmiri dissidents, particularly Syed Ali Shah Geelani, but also the 26 votaries of the all-parties Hurriyat Conference, established in 1993, might pose to reflect and commiserate with those distraught Baloch relatives who discover mutilated corpses by roadsides, stuffed with faeces in their mouth, as part of the Pakistani deep state's pick-up-and-dump routine. Bengalis as former East Pakistanis, Sunni Hanafis too, like Kashmiris and Balochis, but did not have to endure this. The stunning silence of Pakistanis particularly, or Muslims generally for that matter, vindicates the sordid truism that they are selectively animated by outrages visited upon Muslims. Palestinians and Kashmiris during the last 70 years have never reported anything so repulsive in their litany of grievances against Indian and Israeli, namely non-Muslim security forces. It is time Kashmiris on both sides of the line of control were made aware of this putrefied, mutilated cadavers of fellow Muslims in the land of pure Pakistan, where they are now polluted, namely Palestine, which is what Pakistan is, in punchy put-downs back in the 1930s and 40s by Maulana Mazhar Ali Azhar and Ataullah Shah Bukhari in their Majlisul A'la Islam, who even lambasted Jinnah's All India Muslim League and its movement. And their critique of Muslim nationalism, which unfolded, has been grimly vindicated. They, of course, go to relentlessly parody the great leader Qaid-e-Azam as a great infidel, Kafir-e-Azam. And Urdu, Qaid, leader, linguistically, by the way, is derived from the same Arabic root which gives us the noun al-Qaeda, base or foundation. The basis of Jinnah's contention that Kashmir's absorption into the Indian Union was based on fraud and violence is, in a word, baseless. The confessional card, often touted, is adduced as a justification for Kashmir belonging to Pakistan, and thereby vindicating the two-nation theory which Indira Gandhi declared in 1971 lay in the Bay of Bengal. Bangladesh was a rude awakening to Kashmiris, among other South Asian Muslims, for the hollow pretense of Islamic brotherhood and amity, only too pathetically exposed in the atrocities visited by one set of Sunnis towards another across the artificial divide of 47. Sumit Ganguly and his co-editors on a retrospective prospective volume of essays in 1994 said what most scholars would think. Quote, if Pakistan could not cohere on the basis of religion alone, it had few moral claims on its co-religionists in Kashmir, close quote. But even earlier in March 1956, that brilliant scholar Hans Morgenthau, writing in the New Republic, presently observed, Pakistan is not a nation and hardly a state. It has no justification in history, ethnic origin, language, civilization, or the consciousness of those who make up its population. Against whom and how is an army likely to fight which is built upon so tenuous a foundation? It is hard to see how anything but a miracle or else a revival of religious fanaticism will assure Pakistan's future. Moreover, Hussain Haqqani tellingly points out the diminishing significance of the Kashmir is vital for Pakistan platform, which at least in the late 1940s and 50s was posited as the need to merge it with Pakistan. This is not to set any store now because, as Haqqani explains, quote, there has been no threat to the flow of river water into Pakistan despite Indian control of Kashmir, nor has the lack of access to the state's resources impeded Pakistan's economic growth. On the contrary, the case can now be made that the cost of pursuing the claim over Kashmir, especially through ever-increasing military expenditure, far exceeds any economic benefits Pakistan might get by extending its sovereignty over all of Kashmir, close quote. And just what sovereignty then is being considered when a mention of all Kashmir is stated? Actually, sovereignties as stated in the title by disposition. The kingdom that devolved in 1925 on the last Jamwal Rajput Dogra Hindu Maharaja and Commander-in-Chief of State Forces, Lieutenant General Sir Hari Singh, was, as mentioned at the outset, the largest among all monarchies of South Asia, over whom London retained paramountcy by a domiciled resident and the policy of subsidiary alliance. They were tied to the British Crown, wielding de jure suzerainty, with the resident in question having de facto say on all matters. The Government of India Act 1935 introduced the instrument of accession, whereby each ruler was free to accede to the Federation of India. This was, by the beginning of the war in September 39, almost complete. As the last Viceroy made it clear to all 565 sovereigns during the closing days of the Raj, the lapsing of paramountcy implied they were free as sovereigns to join either of the new dominions or become independent. But Lord Mountbatten counselled them that the last was not exactly a choice they opt for, bearing in mind economic, geographic and strategic constraints. The Crown had final say in all matters during the last 200 years, but it was not empowered to partition these kingdoms, please note. The princely state in August 47 of Jammu and Kashmir consisted of some 4 million subjects in a geographical area of 222,870 square kilometers. Largely mountainous and rural, its population was agrarian and domiciled in 8,903 villages and 39 towns. 3 mountain ranges crisscross, thus bifurcating the terrain. Jammu to the south of the outer hills of the Pir Panjal range, the Kashmir Valley, and the outer stretches across the Karakoram range, taking in Gilgit and Balochistan, also known as Tibet and Khod, Little Tibet. Confessionally, the mosaic is diverse with Shaivite Hindus, all of whom are Saraswat Brahmins, Sikhs, Sunnis and Twelver Shia, both branches of Islam, Lamaist Buddhists, who count among the population of Ladakh, and Sevener or Ismaili Shia, the majority of the population in the mountainous fastnesses of Gilgit, Hunza and Balochistan. Immigrant Pashtun communities also settled in the valley during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Time does not permit me to provide a full-blown narrative, for much of this has been rehearsed extensively, albeit controversially depending on the viewpoint of the author concerned. And much of the literature cannot be regarded as disinterested scholarship for the period between August 47 and the United Nations brokered ceasefire on New Year's Day 49. The Maharaja prevaricated over joining either of the two dominions of the British Commonwealth and fancied himself ruling an Asian Switzerland. It was most definitely not to the fancy of any of his neighbours. Like other heads, he signed standstill agreements, thereby permitting him to mull before reaching a decision. A leisured option, so Hari Singh thought, would permit him to ride out this dilemma. His standstill agreement with Pakistan, an initially pragmatic, albeit ultimately disastrous move, led him to devolve post and telegraph responsibilities for the kingdom to Pakistan, on whom it also depended for essential commodities in the first stage. Sectarian strife and carnage, which was raging across the rest of India before and after August 47, and now the newly created Pakistan, made its way into Kashmir, with refugees streaming in from all parts and all note communities, Hindus, Sikhs and Muslims, a situation unobtainable anywhere else across the dominions. So here one witnesses all three engulfed in the mayhem and murder, with a breakdown of authority and enforcement. The autocratic rule of the Dogras may have been exaggerated in Pakistani sources and downplayed in the corresponding Indian ones. But Muslim disgruntlement in the western arc of the kingdom around the estate of Poonch, today divided between both countries, flared up as rebellion among Muslim sharecroppers and soldiers, most of whom were well-equipped, demobbed returnees in 45 after the war. Hari Singh's high-handed handling of this led to a sectarian breakdown among the rank and file of state troops, with Muslims revolting against their Sikh and Hindu commanding officers, and also Muslim soldiers disobeying their Muslim superiors. Pakistan withdrew its lifeline to the kingdom a month later in September 47, citing atrocities inflicted on Muslims. Massacres and disappearances of Muslims in Jammu doubtless took place, but this was against a backlash against the slaying or forcible conversion of Sikhs and Hindus on the western edge of the kingdom, straddling the border with Pakistan. And Pakistan, only going for a month, barely able to sustain itself, decided to raise the stakes by embarking on Jihad as a foreign policy maneuver to force a favourable outcome. And it remains an option exercised by it as a rentier state to this very day. Pakistan could have claimed the high moral ground, but opted for skullduggery, justified as statecraft. What Pakistan chose to do was compel a fait accompli in 1948 and again in May 1999 by officially denying the unofficial sponsorship of irregular Muslim combatants organized, equipped and transported with semi-official connivance of British and Pakistani echelons of the newly drafted Pakistan Army from the division of its imperial predecessor. And these were foot soldiers of Mansoor and Afridi Pashtun volunteers exhorted to battle from the NWFP, Waziristan and Punjab. And they were all led by a certain Major Akbar Khan, whose analysis in the final stages went pear-shaped. Far from liberating Srinagar from an incompetent Hari Singh, these Pashtun jihadists, operationally under the command of Pakistani regular officers, felt it worth their while to halt at the outskirts of Baramulla, where they looted, raped and slew all, choosing not to distinguish British residents, Italian nuns, hospitalized patients and Kashmiris, Hindus, Sikhs or Muslims. Dispute still rages whether Hari Singh did accede to India, and if so, when and where. The literature on this topic is acrimonious, to say the least. There is every good reason not to doubt the Indian contention of the Maharajas signing the accession. And this should be pointed out as well by my other colleagues, as Dr. Paul Stott will talk about official British responses towards domestic terror networks in his presentation. At any rate, the instrument of accession was signed by Hari Singh, as recounted by his son Dr. Karan Singh, in his presence at Hari Niwas Palace, Jammu on 26 October 47. Alan Campbell Johnson, Mountbatten's press attaché, recounts in Mission with Mountbatten 1951, quote, "The legality of the accession is beyond doubt. It should be stressed that the accession has complete validity, both in terms of the British government and Jinnah's expressed policy statements," close quote. Mountbatten's letter, dispatched a day later, October 27th, as Indian Governor General to Hari Singh, in accepting the merger of the kingdom with the Indian Union, also made it clear that, quote, "It is my government's wish that as soon as law and order have been restored in Jammu and Kashmir and her soil cleared of the invader, the question of the state's accession should be settled by a reference to the people," close quote. Mountbatten's biographer, Philip Ziegler, recounts that when Mountbatten flew with General Ismay to Lahore and discussed with Jinnah about it, the latter said, quote, "Jinnah admitted some responsibility for their tribesman activities when he said that if the Indian troops were removed, he would pull out the Pathans," close quote. I, ladies and gentlemen, would argue that Jinnah was not entirely in the know of what was really happening in Kashmir, just as Nawaz Sharif was not in the full picture 52 years later, May 99, in Kargil. The Pakistan deep state, both military and intelligence, were then and now in full command and control. Liaquat Ali Khan, Jinnah's prime minister, was economical with the facts towards the cabinet, the country and the British Supreme High Command, still stationed in Pakistan, wielding joint responsibility over forces of both dominions. And the 1947-48 war established a mainstay of Pakistani civilian military relations, which was to play itself out subsequently. Had Liaquat Ali Khan not been assassinated, he would have been ousted by Pakistan's first successful coup of 1951, not 1958, with Major Akbar Khan, organizer of the Pashtun Jihad raiders, assuming the office of the state. And just as Nawaz Sharif came begging to Bill Clinton in July 99, seeking an honorable exit from Kargil, also as well as to save his skin from the military. Even as the kingdom plunged into chaos on November 1st, 47, the Gilgit Scouts, egged on to revolt by Major William Brown and Captain Jock Matheson, declared allegiance to Pakistan. Hari Singh had appointed them earlier as paramilitary overseers in the kingdom, but both, for reasons of expediency, went along with their troops, who declared an Islamic Republic of Gilgit, which formally invited the government of Pakistan to take charge from 15th November 47. And Brown was quietly shunted off to Peshawar later. It is now alleged that British officers, in the final days before the transfer of power, surreptitiously handed a large number of maps in Jammu and Kashmir, prepared by the Surveyor General's office, to the incoming Pakistani administration. And Indian officials at the time of war also discovered that military intelligence records in the kingdom were missing, as well as those of the Central Intelligence Bureau concerning Jammu and Kashmir. India referred to the issue even as a full war raged across the kingdom on January 1st, 48, under Article 35 of the UN Charter. The UN Commission for India and Pakistan, UNCIP, on a visit in July 48, acknowledged that regular Pakistani troops, despite official denial, were operating in the zone of conflict, Again, like Kargil, May 99, when Pakistan contended it was irregular freedom fighters and not the Northern Light Infantry of Gilgit-Baltistan. So this led to the August 13, 1948 resolution passed by the UN demanding both conflict parties 1. Ceasefire, 2. Truce agreement, and 3. Plebiscite. But please note this was in sequential order, because Pakistan, as India contended, failed to uphold the second proviso, evacuation of troops and tribal raiders from Kashmir and Jammu, the logical proceeding towards which the third requirement of a plebiscite, as assured by Nehru on 2nd November 47, did not take place. There is reason to believe that had such a plebiscite been conducted any time between 48 and 53, the states merger with the Indian Union would have gone in favor of India. But there is every good reason to also maintain that such an administrative exercise in a physically challenging terrain, scarred by conflict, was also unfeasible, if not impossible, to carry out. As the aggrieved party, India had the right to demand that Pakistan, the aggressor, must vacate for just such an exercise in self-determination. Pakistani obduracy carried the day. Sir Owen Dixon, the UN's Australian mediator's September 15, 1950 report merits reiteration 67 years on even today, September 19th. Quote, I was prepared to adopt the view that when the frontier of the state of J&K was crossed on, I believe, 20th October 47 by hostile elements, it was contrary to international law, and that when in May 48, as I believe, units of the regular Pakistan forces moved into the territory of the state, that too was inconsistent with international law, close quote. But I conclude by not sparing the last party involved in this imbroglio, particularly Indira Gandhi, whose birth centenary falls in November. It would be sobering for otherwise ignorant Indians to also realize that by not forcing Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's hand at Simla 72, an opportune moment to have a final resolution which would, in Hussain Haqqani's words, quote, impose a solution and transform the ceasefire line in Kashmir into a final international border, close quote. Thank you very much.